Hi, and welcome to episode 51 of the ChessTDD series. This one is picking up pretty well right where I left off from the last one. So it is a relatively focused effort here. And I do recall, actually, I'm in the strange position of recording this it was about 5 days recording the audio after doing the coding. So I am sort of trying to recall exactly what happened. I remember this went better than the last one. Got a little bit more focused and productive. So I believe what I'm doing here is expanding out the test cases and saying that, okay, so for castling in the case of an unoccupied square, meaning I try to castle from some random place on the board that isn't where the king is. Right now, I believe that's throwing an exception, but what we actually want is for it to return empty. There's just no castling moves available there. It is not necessarily exceptional that a caller or our internal code would try to get the moves for a square with no piece on it. So I'm getting that fixed, and got this casting in here I'm not a huge fan of, but it seems to be turning into somewhat of a necessary evil in this application. So I think here I was looking at potential opportunities for refactoring. Oh no, I wouldn't have been. I would have been actually making this test meaningful. So first I had to get the exception not to be thrown, and now I actually want to see that if I stop struggling with intelligence anyway, I want to see that this is in fact an empty collection. So I'm getting the count once I get the punctuation right, and I don't need to do anything further. That actually turns out to pass, which is not unexpected. So for the next test, let's see here. I'm trying to recall what I was doing. Probably something about, oh, there we go. The king is moved. This should be empty. So there are various things that would get us down the negative path, this being one of them. So all I'm really going to do is, instead of orchestrating a move, I'll get the king piece and just set the has moved property to true. And then what I expect is, once I set that to true and then I make an assertion, the castling move on either side shouldn't come back. So let's say the moves for the white king now are get castling moves for get castling moves for the white king start, and then what we'd expect is that there would be none. So I'll just say assert dot is false any, and that proves to be correct. If memory serves, simply because of the querying of the actual king piece for its moves, although I believe later in this episode I start to question whether we actually want to use the king's moves at all. And in fact, we might be able to, as a piece of foreshadowing, get rid of the whole nonsense about figuring out castling moves as part of the king altogether, maybe offload that responsibility from that piece. But I didn't actually do that in this episode, so we'll kind of see how that shakes out. I recall that it was looking like that would be possible. So next up is that I want to do something here that I get to do when we're testing at the unit level. Why this is like so pleasant is because I can actually be a little bit more fine-grained in reasoning about what things should do. And so I don't remember what so basically I want this to throw an exception if I'm building this thing, because it'll throw an exception in line if I've passed null into the constructor. So I want to be intentional about that. I don't want to rely on some downstream error. I'm big on this. So if you have a class level precondition that the thing on which the class is operating, this collaborator board, set it as a class level precondition that this thing not be null, otherwise the class makes no sense. So I'm not going to limp along performing operations with a null board. I'll just say right from the beginning, this is not a thing that you can do. So now I'm looking at doing a little bit of cleanup and refactoring, extracting a method where it makes sense to do so, and then kind of getting rid of any ugliness that comes along for the ride. I'm looking at those. I really don't like the way the default is that fully qualified, see there, chess.king type qualifiers. That drives me insane. So spent a bit of time here thinking about what moves I wanted. Or, excuse me, what I wanted to name this. Get castling moves for king. It gets tough sometimes when you do an extraction and the thing you've extracted is actually just the meat of the parent method, so you figure out how to differentiate with those. That's one of the things I've tended to struggle with the most when it comes to naming. But this one I kind of like. So get castling moves for king. I'll pass the king. And then the coordinate in question. And then you can see me go back, harp on this over and over again, but go back and be very deliberate about the names that I give things and the idea that they should make as much sense as humanly possible. So all the methods here look okay to me. Maximum of one control flow statement, not too many lines of code per method, so I'm happy with the way this is going. Oh, I don't remember exactly what I was doing here. I think I wanted to play with this to see if the ternary operator made it seem more readable to me. I don't remember what the verdict was. It's certainly more terse, but I don't know if that's necessarily good. I feel like I might have rolled this one back. I'm not a huge fan of it. Even once I get it building and running, it's a little dense. I don't know if it gains me any readability, so yeah, that's something, there's a lesson to take away. Maybe I did leave it. You might try on something for size to see if the method looks better and then decide it doesn't and just put it back. I definitely encourage you, if you have the right tools and a green set of unit tests, to play around to see if you can maximize readability. And granted, it's going to be somewhat subjective, but it's a good practice to be in, to always focus on getting the code maximally readable and to feel comfortable kind of experimenting and moving the code around and trying different idioms. So back to work. I'm going to say that, okay, let's get into the sort of tests where we move one of the rooks or the other, and then would expect that there is one castling move returned, so it's not all or nothing. So I'm going to retrieve this rook on the queen side. And then I think I'm going to, when green here, do this refactoring where I'm going to give this rook a name here. Don't want to keep referring to it as board coordinate 411. So I do that refactoring while green, and then I go and find all the instances of the duplication that I want to get rid of. Then I can go kind of move on with this test. Not sure what I was waiting for exactly here, but sure there was a method to my madness, or maybe just Visual Studio paused for a second, who knows. So now I'm going to get all the moves for the king. And then I'm going to assert, I believe, not just that there's one, but specifically that there is the move 1-7. And I'm a pretty firm believer in one assert per test method. It's not that I think that's an absolute rule. It's just my preference. To me, they're easier to reason about. So with this one, I think I got a little bit cute. And what I'm saying is that every move that comes back should match 1-7. Now, by the rules of the game here, there's only, 1-1-7. That's not something that we can have a duplicate of. So in essence, I'm asserting two things for the price of one. I'm saying, number one, that we're only going to get one move back, and number two, that that move is 1/7, but I don't have to have two asserts to do it. So, not sure if that's awesome or not, but it doesn't matter if it's awesome or not at the moment. I'm red, and I need to get back to green. Once I'm green, that's when I can start refactoring both tests and production code. Pardon me on the volume here. I'm in a hotel, so I'm trying to keep my voice down. It's late at night. Let's see. So I think this is where I first had the inkling that maybe we would want to not rely entirely on the moves from the king itself. You're going to see some pauses here as I start to kind of think this through. So I'm saying if the king to move is null, then we want to return this empty thing. And so before I was kind of saying, well, if we're moving, if this isn't valid, then return empty is kind of all or nothing. Otherwise, get the moves from the king. But this is the first time, and this is kind of where I got to a local maximum with the old implementation, where it's not all or nothing. So I have to restrict moves based on something other than the king. So that's kind of what I'm working through here. I want to say specifically, I'm only worrying about the white side here. That let's look at essentially the, what was it, the queen's rook? So let's look and see if that's moved. If not, we'll add a castling move to this side. And that should get everything to green. And then it should also lead us pretty well into the next test, which is obviously going to be king's rook. So now you see there's this kind of, we'll start with nothing, and then we'll look at the queen's rook side. And if that meets the criteria, great, we'll add. Then we'll also look at the king's rook side. If that meets the criteria, we'll add. So that's a fundamentally different thing than looking at the king for its own moves and sort of filtering down. And that's what I'm talking about when I say maybe the thing to do here isn't actually to rely on the king for this at all. I hope I didn't leave it like this. This is kind of awkward. I think I was looking at how to... I don't know what I was doing here exactly. I'd gotten to green. Oh, okay. Was I getting ahead of myself? This is the downside of not doing it right away. Recording the audio, I should say. It's probably the worst way I could approach it, I suppose. If I'm going to go a long time between episodes, that's fine. Probably not ideal if I do the code and then kind of forget what was going on. I don't know. Maybe it provides an interesting perspective. So I'm red again. Does this get me to green? No, this gets me to another form of red. Return empty if... I wonder if I missed something here. I'm not clear on why I'm probably implementing both of these to get the count right. So there were a bunch of other tests that would have failed if I hadn't done it this way. I see. So if the king to move is not null, probably and. There we go. And it has not moved. What's broken now? Don't recall what the problem was, but I do know that I fixed it sooner or later. So if you look at this code even now, yeah, I don't think that space is going to solve the problem. But anyway, if you look at this code even now, you can see that this has gotten... I'm no longer querying the king for its moves at all. And that's what I'm saying. We might be able to go back and actually boot all that castling stuff out of the king and make that class simple. Oh, wouldn't you know it, it's another transposition error that's become somewhat of a theme here. Alright, so this isn't the cleanest method. I don't like that nested conditional. But I'm going to go over here to the Trello board and say exactly what I was just expressing to you. Maybe we can get rid of all this logic from king. How would we know when we can get rid of all that logic from king? Well, we've kind of finished out the string here with the unit tests and then start writing some acceptance tests that don't hit that castling logic. If we see uncovered code in there with all the tests passing, after shuffling the implementation around a bit to use this new class, well, then we know we can get rid of it. There's no test depending on it. So that'll be kind of the litmus test. Now what I'm doing is going in here, and I've got these constants, if you will, that I've defined. And I have duplication across the production classes and the test classes. And duplication across any classes is duplication. So what I want to start to define here is semantics related to castling in the castling status checker. So rather than defining them in the test classes, I'm going to have the tests refer to these specific pieces in this class. And I suppose I could go do some kind of find and replace, but I opted not to because I think it could have gotten weird with the inline class here. And it wasn't a terribly large amount of classes for which to go do this. Or excuse me, instances for which to go do this. So once that gets into place and all the errors are resolved, now we're green again. That's good. And now we've gotten rid of the duplication. And best of all, I can also get rid of this, not just duplication of that board coordinate 4, but also the magic constant in there, if you will. So instead of board coordinate 4, 1, 1, now we're going to say get the piece at white queen's rook start. So that's going to be more readable too to anyone maintaining this. And we could probably even go a little further in making this readable. I don't think I did, but if not, board.get piece white queen's rook start has moved. That's pretty readable, but you could probably extract a method from there and just call it like, if the queen's rook has moved, or if the queen's rook hasn't moved or something. That may sound silly, but I'm a believer in creating one-line extractions for Boolean conditions just to make it very readable. Because that's what you want at the end of the day. You want this domain logic kind of reading like an instruction manual almost. So somebody who's a chess player but not a programmer could come in here and say, yes, I can verify that is how chess works. If the king hasn't moved and the rook hasn't moved and the other rook hasn't moved, then there should be 2 castling options, assuming there are no pieces in between. That's something that we'll also have to get to later. So let's see. I think getting kind of near the end here and mindful of time, wanted to wrap up, so I wanted to get this back into some reasonable state, so let's move this over as production code and then take care of the update to the references and includes and all that. So that's looking pretty good so far, I'd say. No errors. What was I doing? It's maybe thinking about... Yeah. Probably miscellaneous cleanup here again. It'd be handy if I were a little more up to date. Oh, it looks like I snuck in another test. I don't remember doing that. Probably at some point, too, I'd like to create names for the castling destinations, like 7-1 and 3-1. Return 1-3 only if king's rook is not there. So here what I'm saying is, let's look at a case where one of the rooks is just gone. We shouldn't be able to castle in that situation either. So let's just remove the king's rook, and then do this same pattern here where we're going to get the castling moves and then assert that they're all equal to the queen's rook castling move, because there's only one. So I don't remember exactly how this went. Maybe it just worked. Maybe I got it working quickly. I seem to recall being, upbeat when I finished this episode, so I feel like either it worked or I got it working quickly. Well, it looks like it's failing quickly. That's actually throwing an exception. Maybe. Yeah, so it's trying to get a piece that doesn't exist. So I think probably where I'm going to leave this off is to say that if the piece is... So if the piece is there and it is moved. That gets it green. Did I... Oh man, I was really pressing forward here in spite of being low on time. Probably I wanted to get it symmetrical, and then I'm guessing, unless I was a real magician with this, I left the predictable refactoring there for the next episode. Obviously, you can see there's some logic. If you've been following this series, you've seen me do it a lot, but looking at the smell test, I guess, for the logic in this production method, there are two pieces of code that look nearly identical that can clearly be factored into a common method with a different parameter. Don't know what that looks like quite yet exactly, but there's no way that code should stand, especially once we even things out here. So this is going to be probably asserting that they're all 7-1. Yep. No transposition errors, no careless mistakes. So I will go in and repeat this logic, and I can see that clearly on my recording here there are scant seconds left, so I suspect that I got this green and then hustled over to commit and then push up to GitHub. Hopefully I had the good sense to... Yeah, I think this deserves a card. Refactor that. Move it up to the top, I seem to recall. Oh, quick check for the method name. So there we go. I promise next time I will endeavor to move the coding and the audio recording closer together, so I'm not guessing along with you what's going to happen next. But this is progress. I like where this left off, and so hopefully next time around we'll get some refactoring and maybe start on the black pieces. And that's it. I'll see you next time.